Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. My name is Mike Reed. I'm a BI consultant here at Pragmatic Works. Currently delving into big data and having a lot of fun at it. So I decided I would share my, try to share my enthusiasm with everybody. This is part 2 in a 3-part series. 2 weeks ago in part 1, I walked through a number of, well, I'll just show you. Pull this up real quick. I walked through a number of scripts. I was focused pretty much on Azure. Walked through a number of scripts I wrote that will spin up an HD Insight cluster and load data into it, etc. Really talked about the environments to work in. It was very much Azure-centric. I do, if you go to my website, have information on how to set up the Hortonworks sandbox, and I'm working on some other experiments for that. Please check that site if that's what you're more interested in. There is certainly some cost to the Azure side, so if you're not prepared for that, then you might want to play with it a little, at least use up your trial anyway, but you might have to call it quits after that. Right now I'm running a bill of $50 to $70 a month for what I'm messing with. And it's not heavy duty at all. It really does, it's a little off topic, but really does come down to managing your hours. So what are we going to talk about today? So beyond the basics, I'm really focused on analytics. If you watched my last webinar, I made the statement that without analytics, without actually extracting value from all this fun we're having, I guess, with Hadoop and the big data, etc., then whoever's paying for this is not going to be happy. You have to extract insights, and hopefully ones they don't know, and they need to be actionable as well. So there's in the cycle of analytics, there are a few steps here that we'll walk through. To do any sort of analytics, you really need to identify the problem, even if the problem is, I want to know what I don't know about my data. That's actually a very clear question, but it's obviously very open-ended. In most cases, you may have a more specific problem. I want to reduce the outages of my equipment. I want to anticipate when something is going to go wrong. I want to anticipate what my sales are going to be, or what demand is going to be for inventory, etc. So identifying the problem is a huge piece, because once you understand the problem, then you can move on to preparing your data, because your data needs to support the problem, and you may or may not have the data to do it. It may be something I'll talk about in week 3 is the questions to ask of your data. I might propose that a lot of businesses really need to be introspective before they start, thinking about, well, I really need some sentiment data, because they may or may not actually be able to manage, may not be doing the best job they can to managing their business with the data they have. And from what I understand from people I've interviewed that would be qualified as experts, that's very frequently the case. Once you preparation of the data, does your data support the analysis of your problem? The next step is to choose a mining model. There are all sorts of models. Some will fit, some will not. The data you have prepared will very much determine what kind of model you can run on it with any sort of probability of extracting something that's really useful, better than a coin toss. And that is actually the ultimate test, is how well did we do against a coin toss. Choosing a model, that kind of works back. There may be a little bit of a cycle there. You may have to go, well, I really want to run this model because it'll tell me this stuff, or the model I thought I was going to use doesn't work, or it doesn't tell me what I want, so you may have to cycle back to preparing your data again. So anyway, once you've chosen your model, we would move on to test and train the model, and that typically involves a series of certainly more than one, and generally a lot of iterations through selection of what they call independent variables. These are the variables that determine the output. They're used to predict your output, and you may or may not have all of them. You may choose the wrong ones. That's kind of a that's an easy place to have a giant problem, is figuring out what parameters, what inputs, what columns, what data you really need to be looking at that best identify and predict the outcome you're looking for. Experience at Microsoft in the behavioral targeting group. I heard over and over again, there were a lot of people that were, fixated on, well, I'm using 38 properties or whatever, when the seniors in the group were saying you really need it. You really are looking for 2 or 3 or 5 or something that you can actually manage and control. So once you've developed your model, you test and train. And testing means running your algorithm. Training means running your algorithm on a representative set that wasn't used in the test, and looking to see if you've actually if the prediction actually fits or improves your output, if it gives you the results you're looking for and the margin of error is reasonable. If your model doesn't fit, then your probabilities and margins of error will be high, and once you get too high, you might as well go back to a coin toss. And last, which is kind of a two-step deal. One is you have to deliver results, or you need to prepare the output and get it ready for some sort of visualization. You need to take all this stuff that you've done that can be a lot of gobbledygook to anybody that doesn't know analytics somewhat well, or to some degree. It's certainly not going to mean anything to most execs, unless they've been in this end of the business for some time.